Hi, everybody. It's Chris again from Elixir. And following on from last week's discussion around partnerships between corporates and startups, where we discussed the case for collaboration last week, we're going to really have a discussion today about finding the perfect partner. So how do corporates and startups set themselves up to identify who they want to work with?
Yeah, it's a big question, Chris. I'm Charles from Founders Factory Africa. And that's one of the things that we juggle with every day at Founders Factory. There's two sides of this coin in any relationship. There's finding the perfect startup, and there's over 4,000 startups across Africa based on one source that we've got access to. And so the question is, where do corporates look for trying to find that perfect match?
Hey guys, Linda here, manager at Elixir. So we're going to be chatting about how do we find this perfect combination. It's a very difficult thing to do because all startups want to work with a great corporate partner, but corporate partners also just want to really find the right startup that they can nurture and actually form a really long-lasting relationship out of. And yeah, as I said, it's a good question, and I guess there's a couple of places where we can start. From then it's like number one, and I guess you guys can chip in here. It's like, where do you start? Where do the corporates even start looking when there's so many startups out there?
I think one of the things that I've observed in my conversations with people in corporates is the term startup is so homogenous. And yet when you kind of lift the lid on what a startup is, it's actually like a huge continuum of different stages of a business. And maybe it's worth just spending just a couple of minutes just explaining what the difference is between the different stages. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that there's different cases and different value exchanges that happen at the different maturity levels of startups. Just to give you some clarity for our listeners as to what we're talking about, we're really talking about funding levels, and that is closely associated with the maturity and of the startup, and as a result, the value or the flexibility that the startup has to adapt and work with the corporate.
Maybe just to add to that, you may have heard of the categorizations of pre-seed, seed, pre-series A, series A. Now, what all that really means is that the startup is at different levels of having demonstrated its ability to achieve product market fit, which is another phrase commonly used across startups and technology. And the easy way to think about this is product market fit is made up of three different things. The first is problem solution fit. So you can evidence the fact that you are trying to solve a real problem, and that at least conceptually, the solution that you've got speaks to the problem that actually exists. The second piece is then product user fit. So the idea that the solution that you've built is actually being used by consumers to solve that problem. And then the final piece, which is so elusive, is then pricing product fit. And that's that people are prepared to pay for your product to solve that problem. And once all those three things can be evidenced, typically then you're considered to have product market fit. And that's a really useful thing to understand because startups exist on this continuum. So when you go into finding the right one, it's good to know which stage you're prepared to and able to partner with.
Absolutely. And I think that the type of partnership and the ability to influence the direction of the product is directly linked to which stage they're at, Charles. Obviously, the earlier they are in the development cycle, the more that the corporate could bring their perspective into how that product develops. But there is essentially a higher risk, but a higher return at that stage because they're not as mature. At a later stage, where they have achieved product market fit and they're even starting to scale to some degree, the likelihood of success increases significantly, but potentially the upside and the uniqueness of the offering potentially decreases at that stage.
Yeah, and I think Chris, we spoke about this earlier in that, once you've found the startup that's at the correct level, it then becomes about, having an open sort of relationship, so to speak, towards how you choose to nurture that, right? Because, there's no use running a whole bunch of, analyses on 100 startups, spending so much time trying to find the right guy. It's about actually just getting onto the ground and executing, instead of, going through long-winded processes, trying to, nitpick and say, this is not right, this is not, this is the right way. So I think that's also just a challenge when it comes to once you've sort of found the guy who's really of the right product market fit as well.
Agree, and I think that's quite an interesting one. I always kind of, to use the turn of phrase, and it's widely used, is don't let perfect get in the way of done. And I think getting on and working with a startup and iterating is obviously, you do some due diligence up front, is a lot more valuable than scouring through hundreds of probably quite similar offerings to find the perfect fit for you. Get down, find who you can work with them, and develop and learn through the process. We talked a lot about that in the first episode.
I think that's easier said than done. I think, like, reflecting on how corporates often need to be so deliberate in the decisions that they make in order to justify them through the systems that are in place internally. I would challenge the position to say, what could corporates do, or what can be done to find the best partner fastest without getting in the way of progress? And so with that in mind, and reflecting specifically across the continent how fragmented the startup ecosystems are, it's not as easy as it sounds. And so at Founders Factory Africa, for example, that's one of the challenges we face in sourcing businesses for our portfolios, which is why we have a dedicated function looking at finding the best businesses across Africa. And we use a whole variety of mechanisms across leveraging our network, the investor network, using scouts in different priority markets, using key contacts.
I mean, and I think, we work with corporates on this particular challenge quite a lot. And I don't want to be misinterpreted when I say you just need to get it done. There does need to be a screening process, and it needs to be structured and aligned with the corporate's needs, so that they identify what exactly they're looking for. So the process that we've generally taken is, due to the large number of startups, and Charles mentioned the number of over 4,000 on the continent alone. How do corporates understand who of those to work with? And we've taken the view that an ideal way to do this is to partner, and we've set up what we call our Global Innovation Network, which is linked up with companies such as Founders Factory Africa, and very much a part of why we're having this conversation today together with Charles is people in that network are set up to effectively scout and scan the market and identify the high quality startups. Now, that's not to say that people who aren't involved, or startups that aren't involved in accelerators or getting funding from venture capital firms, are not high quality. But I think from a corporate perspective, the odds of those being successful, sustainable startups is significantly increased. And so that's one of the ways in which we work with corporates to identify the very big end of the funnel. And then through that process, we need to scout and understand, qualify relevance, and identify the real opportunities that we can, have the initial screening of the startups, and then go forward to what we think is the use case for a POC, and then drive into a POC process. And that's a critical part of how we work with our corporate partners.
Yeah, I think one of the dependencies on that what you just described is something that I've also observed requires more attention, and that's just knowing yourself. So the ability to articulate the specific problems you're looking to solve, or the questions you're looking to answer. And I think investing time in those up front will really help you search for and find the right partner. Whether it's a kind of higher level problem of how do we expose ourselves to different things that are happening in this space, or we need a partner to help us accelerate our AI capability as part of this new credit model strategy that we're pursuing. And then to your point, Chris, starting.
Just conscious of time again, guys. I mean, it's a topic obviously we're all passionate about, and it seems we could talk for hours on it. But I think it's been a great discussion today, and I think it's probably worth closing out. And in our next discussion, we're going to be having a discussion around making these partnerships work.
That's the fun bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the hard bit.
Exactly.
Guys,
great
speaking.
Great, guys. Great speaking. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.